Hey guys, how's it going? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and today I'm going to be reviewing the D-Art Mega Man X Zero Type 2 by Bandai. Really cool figure. That's what the box looks like on the front. It's this nice big window with this X across it. Some metallic parts on the box, some embossed parts on the box. The side just has a profile of Zero. This side has a standing Zero, and it says D-Arts, Digital Arts. The back shows the faces it includes, a couple poses, and the bottom has all the information nobody cares about. So that's what the packaging looks like. Let's take the figure out and review it. It does come with some instructions. You probably won't need those, especially after watching the review, but probably should hang on to them just in case. Never hurts to keep stuff with your figures. So the clamshells on the D-Arts figures are the most impressive clamshells I've ever seen, or blisters, or whatever you want to call them. They're 4 parts at least. There's this top layer which houses the figure, which protects the figure, and they all are a pain in the rear to take apart. So the top layer comes off. So the figure is sitting inside that blister, and you can get to most of the stuff. For this guy anyway, you can get to most of the stuff. We'll get to that in a second. And then you have another 2-part blister, which has the top layer that holds everything in place again, and another bottom layer, which holds his extra stuff. And we'll get to that in a second as well. So we'll just set that aside and talk about the figure. As you can see, he does come with the 3 faces. First face, extra face, is the one with the open mouth, nicely detailed. Next one has the eyes slightly off to the right, and he's kind of making a grimace. He's got his teeth together, looks angry. And then the standard face, which is just a blank face. Pretty much no expression on that one at all. They are easily interchangeable. And the way you do the face swapping is, probably the easiest way is to grab up top here and down at the chin, and just kind of try to separate that from the back of the head. You can see where the seam is on there. It's really stuck on there pretty good, so that's actually a nice thing. So the head just pops in half like that, just pegs back together, and the face slides down and out like that. Now some of the faces will get these red marks on them. This one's not too bad. Don't worry about that because they're going to get hidden by the face mask. So just go ahead and pop that back in and pop it back together, if I can do it on camera. And there you go. And that just pops right back into the body and onto the neck peg real easily. We'll talk about the figure in a moment. First, let's talk about accessories. We have 3 different swords for Zero, which is cool because Zero is known for the sword. The first one is the big one. It is semi-translucent. I guess it is translucent, not semi. You can see through the entire thing. It does have shading too, though. The front part is a little bit darker than the back. So it's very nice. It's a nice sturdy plastic. It doesn't feel cheap, but it does have a little bit of give to it, so you don't have to worry too much about breaking it, even though it's really rigid. So that's nice, and it does have a nice point on it too. The handle part where the little blasty thing is looks pretty good. I think they could have sculpted that a little differently. Just nitpicking, it's not really an issue, but you can still see the red peg in there. So I wish it was sculpted just a little bit differently so you couldn't see the peg. No big deal. All of the swords come off, all the blades come off of the handle. They're all the same, all the handles are. And the bottom of the handle comes off as well, so that you can get that into his hand. And I'll show you that real quick while I have the sword here, if I can get to it. Okay, so his hand's like that. If you leave the bottom of the sword on there, you're not going to be able to do anything with it. So you have to take the bottom part off. Then you can fit that in there. Now you'll notice his thumb always gets in the way, so you kind of have to pry the thumb back a little bit to get that all the way down. And then you can put the bottom of the sword back on. So that way you don't have to bust anything trying to wedge it in there. It just slides in nicely, which works perfectly well. I'll just leave that on there for now. He has this big sword, then he has two other small swords, which I guess are technically supposed to be the same sword, just one has a dull tip and one has a pointy tip, depending on if you have kids around maybe, or kids are playing with it, I don't know. But they're really just the same kind of lance style sword. So they are also translucent blue. Same exact handles, they come apart just like the other one. We'll set those aside for now and move on. There's so many accessories for these figures. I'm going to take that handle off for now just so that I don't have to put that away. Okay, one other thing I want to show you before we move on from the swords is Zero has a spot on his back for the sword handle to snap into for storage. So that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. I like that they incorporated that into the figure, and that snaps in pretty nicely. We'll leave that off though for now. Get the swords out of the way and talk about the blaster. Of course we have to talk about the blaster because it's a Mega Man figure. He has two different blaster heads, or whatever you want to call it. The standard one with the gem inside so that it looks like it's nice and red. And then you have the open one, which is open, and even though he doesn't come with an energy effect, you can use any of the other energy effects that come with either of the Mega Man figures, Mega Man X full armor or the standard armor version. They just snap right in there. And these just swap out. You pop it off. Of course, it's not going to come off for me. Come on. Sometimes they're really snug. Okay, so they just pop right off, if you're lucky. Pop on the new one, and you can insert the energy effect into there. Simple as that. They do have a little groove there for you to pop it off, but as you can see, and this is a good thing, they don't come off super easily, which I think is fine. Come on. There we go. Put this back on because I don't have any energy effects. However, I do have energy effects that I've made that work nicely for these figures. They don't snap into the blaster like I just mentioned that the official ones do, but they do make for great displays, and I'll post those in a video if anybody's interested. I am selling them. I had to plug that real quick. Okay, as far as the blaster goes, we also have the alternate arm. He's got the blaster on his right arm and a standard arm on his left. If you don't want the blaster on his right arm, you have an interchangeable second arm. Blaster just snaps onto that little square peg right there. Can you see inside? I don't know if you can see that. Either way, there's a little peg hole in there. It just snaps right on. And same thing with this. Just snaps right on. It's not the best interchangeable design. I don't care for the peg design too much, but it is effective. The arms work just fine. We'll talk about articulation and alternate hands in just a second. Put this back together first because I think the blaster is cooler than the hand. Okay, let's talk about paint job on these figures. The paint job is typically really good. There are some problems though. This is my second Zero actually because the first one had some flaws. This one's pretty good, so I'm not complaining about the paint job. As you can see, the detail work on the shoulder and on the face is really nice. There's a little bit of running and bleeding here and there, but nothing too noticeable. My biggest complaint about this figure is the hair. It's solid plastic, so it kind of weighs the figure down. The separate pieces, you can see the seams pretty obviously, so that's not the best. And the way it's connected to the head, I'll pop it off so I can show you, is also not the best design. It only has a little bit of motion side to side and just a little bit up and down. It definitely needs to be more articulated. I don't care for that too much. The shading is good though, so the paintwork is still solid. As you can see in the helmet there on the blaster, and actually that might just be paint on the blaster. Hard to see in the camera. Yeah, it's just paint. On the chest, the forehead, and on the sides of the helmet, and in the blaster, there are the little plastic gem things, which look really nice on the figure. So the overall appearance is really good. The sculpt is spot on. The articulation is also really good on these figures. We'll talk about that as soon as we finish talking about the extra hands. He comes with 2 fists, one for each side of course, and they just pop off standard ball peg really simply. So he's got 2 fists, 2 of the thumbs up or sword hands, which I can just show you right on there. So you can have that be a thumbs up or a hand to hold the sword. Then he also has two of these open hands, which can be for holding the blaster as if he's gonna fire. Wrong hand. But whatever, you can see he can hold the blaster with that, or just for more dynamic posing, that's up to you. Either way, he's got tons of different hands, which I think is always a bonus. Interchangeable parts like that's always a plus. Then, like I said, he has the three faces. As far as articulation goes, I already showed you the hair, the head. The neck is on a ball peg. The head itself is on a ball peg too. So plenty of articulation in the head. The hair does get in the way a lot. So you're going to be somewhat limited in the posing, but you should be able to get what you need done. Even though it's in the way a lot, it's still pretty decent. You can't make him look up at all though, that's a problem. For the shoulders, standard ball peg socket for the shoulder, ball disc for the actual shoulder there, and then this is on a separate joint so that you can fill that gap in a little better. Depending on how you have the arm posed, you can move the shoulder pad around, which is nice. Bicep swivel right there underneath the ball peg, double jointed elbow. This silver piece can move back and forth to hide the joint, but it is a double jointed elbow. And then, like I showed you earlier, the hand is on a ball peg. Running out of breath. Too much stuff to talk about on this figure. The torso is on a double ball peg at the top and at the waist, so plenty of rotation. You don't have to worry about that at all. And then plenty of any other posing you want to do, you can get it done with this. The hips are on ball pegs that swing forward. They're relatively limited, but they're still pretty darn good. One of the side effects of having this joint on zero is they pop off pretty easily. Not nearly as tight as it should be, but it will hold a pose no problem. Back to the hips. As you can see inside there, it's got a hinge type of mechanism, and then it has the ball peg. And then these little silver things are floating so that they cover up the joint pretty much however you need them to. So that's pretty good. Not too much range of motion side to side, mostly forward and back. And it does have a swivel in there. Double jointed knee just like the elbow. Very, very nice. And the ankle is just chock full of articulation. As you can see inside, there's a ball peg at the top and at the bottom. And it has a ball disc in there, so plenty range of motion. Even though these feet are humongous, you can get them really however you need them to be for any sort of posing. And just crazy articulation in the feet. You can see in there a little bit better, hopefully. I know the lighting's not the best for seeing inside crevices like that, but either way, plenty range of motion. He's got more gems in the feet as well. So, great looking figure. Posability is pretty much off the charts. Even though some things are somewhat limited, it's really not too big of a problem. And I am perfectly content with the figure as is. The only real complaint I have is the hair being so much in the way. It could definitely have been better. But what are you going to do? Nothing's perfect, so I'm not going to complain too much. So that's the D-Arts Zero. And I don't know if I showed you guys the height, so I'll do that real quick. And then we'll call it a wrap. He stands with his legs straight and everything mostly straight. 5.5 inches tall, so pretty good size figure for being one of the D-Arts figures. And like I said, it's a very nice figure. I do recommend it. I prefer this one over the Type 1, even though the shoulders do pop out a little bit. It's still a great figure. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for some more reviews and some other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.